Hollywood superstar Keanu Reeves was wrapping up an exhausting day on set when fatigue and hunger led him to pull into a McDonald's for a quick meal. What should have been a simple dinner break at the quiet fast food restaurant would soon thrust him into a world of unimaginable darkness. When he first noticed the twin girls in matching yellow dresses moving from table to table, their small hands outstretched in silent plea, he thought nothing of it. But when they approached his booth, the words they whispered would shatter his world and force him to take action that would put his own life and career at risk. The sun was setting on the horizon, casting long shadows across the movie set as the crew began to pack up their equipment. Keanu Reeves stood by his trailer, wiping the sweat from his brow after a long day of filming. The director, a portly man with a graying beard, approached him with a wide smile. "That's a wrap, Keanu. Fantastic work today," he said, clapping the actor on the shoulder. Keanu nodded, a tired but satisfied expression on his face. "Thanks, Mike. It's been a great shoot." As the rest of the crew bustled around, exchanging high fives and back pats, several members approached Keanu, their faces lit with excitement. "Come on, Keanu," Sarah, one of the makeup artists, called out with a grin. "First round's on me, you can't say no to that." The camaraderie built over the long production period was evident in their easy banter and warm smiles, their bond forged through countless long days and late nights. Keanu offered an apologetic smile, his voice kind but firm. "Thanks, guys, but I've got other plans for tonight. Maybe next time." A chorus of mock groans rose from the group, but their grins betrayed their understanding. "You're missing out," Sarah teased, shaking her head dramatically. "Next time you owe us a drink." Keanu chuckled softly and gave a small wave as they drifted back into their celebrations, leaving him to his thoughts. As the crew dispersed, Keanu made his way to his car, feeling the weight of the day's work settling into his bones. He slid into the driver's seat and pulled out his phone, scrolling through his messages. His brow furrowed as he read a text from his friend, Jake. "Hey man, slight change of plans. My photo shoot's running late. Can we push back the meetup by a few hours?" Keanu sighed, feeling a mix of disappointment and relief. He was looking forward to seeing his friends, but the prospect of a short rest before the gathering was appealing. He quickly typed out a reply. "No problem. Let me know when you're done. I'll take a break and meet you guys later." With that decided, Keanu started the car and pulled out of the parking lot. As he merged onto the highway, the fatigue of the day began to settle in more deeply. The rhythmic hum of the tires on the asphalt and the gentle vibration of the car threatened to lull him into a drowsy state. Recognizing the need for a break, Keanu kept his eyes peeled for a rest stop. After a few miles, the familiar golden arches of McDonald's came into view. Without hesitation, he signaled and took the exit. The parking lot was relatively empty as Keanu pulled in. He stepped out of the car, stretching his arms above his head and feeling his joints pop. The cool evening air was a refreshing change from the stuffy set. Inside the McDonald's, Keanu approached the self-service kiosk. The touchscreen glowed invitingly as he navigated through the menu, selecting a simple meal, a cheeseburger, fries, and a coffee. The machine whirred and printed out his receipt with a sharp mechanical sound. Keanu found an empty booth near the back of the restaurant, away from the few other patrons. He settled into the relative anonymity of the fast food joint, grateful for the moment of peace. As he waited for his order number to be called, he closed his eyes briefly, letting the day's tensions begin to ebb away. As Keanu sat in his booth, his eyes half closed in a moment of rest, a flicker of movement caught his attention. He blinked, focusing on the far side of the restaurant, where two small figures were moving between the tables. As his vision cleared, he realized they were identical twin girls, no more than 11 or 12 years old. What struck Keanu most was their attire. The girls wore matching yellow dresses that, despite being wrinkled and somewhat soiled, still retained an underlying quality that seemed out of place in the fast food restaurant. The dresses spoke of better days, perhaps of a life quite different from the one these children were currently living. Keanu watched as the twins approached each table systematically. Though he couldn't hear their words from this distance, it was clear they were asking for something. Their small hands were outstretched, their faces a mixture of hope and resignation. The reactions from the other customers were painfully consistent. Some aggressively shooed the girls away, their faces contorted with annoyance. Others simply turned their backs, pointedly ignoring the children's presence. A middle-aged woman clutched her purse tighter as the girls approached, eyeing them with suspicion. What was most troubling to Keanu was the staff's reaction, or rather, their lack of reaction. The employees behind the counter and those cleaning tables seemed to look right through the girls, their practiced indifference suggesting this was a regular occurrence. Despite the continuous rejection, the twins persisted. They moved from table to table with a determination that was both admirable and heartbreaking. Their small shoulders were set with a resolve that no child should have to bear. Keanu's order number was called, breaking his concentration on the scene unfolding before him. He stood up, walking toward the pickup counter, but his eyes still following the twins as they made their way towards the exit. As he approached the counter to collect his food, he saw the girls push open the glass doors and step out into the parking lot. Curiosity and concern warred within him as he picked up his tray. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong with this situation. As he made his way back to his booth, he kept his gaze fixed on the windows, watching as the twins approached the outdoor trash bins. With a mixture of horror and sadness, Keanu observed as the girls carefully retrieved a half-eaten burger from one of the bins. They settled at an outside table, their movements now slow and deliberate as they meticulously divided their salvaged meal into 2 equal portions. Lost in his observations, Keanu didn't notice the woman approaching until he nearly collided with her. He stumbled back, hastily adjusting his grip on his drink to avoid spilling it. "Sorry, he began, an apology forming on his lips, but the words froze mid-sentence. The woman's face shifted in rapid succession, from irritation to shock, and then to unmistakable excitement, her eyes widening as recognition dawned. "Oh my God," she gasped, her eyes wide. "You're Keanu Reeves." Keanu nodded, offering a polite smile. "Yes, that's me. I'm sorry about almost bumping into you." The woman waved off his apology, fumbling for her phone. Would it be okay if we took a picture together?" "Of course," Keanu agreed, used to such requests. As they posed for the selfie, the woman noticed Keanu's gaze drifting back to the window where the twins were still visible. "Oh, those girls," she said, her tone a mixture of pity and annoyance. "They've been causing trouble around here for weeks, maybe even months. Always begging, never seem to leave. It's a shame, really." Keanu's brow furrowed. "Has anyone tried to help them?" The woman shrugged. "You'd think the police or the store management would do something, but nothing ever changes. It's like they're invisible." She checked her watch and exclaimed, "Oh, I've got to run. Thank you so much for the photo." As the woman hurried away, Keanu remained rooted to the spot, his mind racing. The situation with the twins was clearly more complex than he had initially thought. With a deep breath, he made his way back to his booth, his food momentarily forgotten as he contemplated what, if anything, he could do to help. Keanu had barely touched his food other than a few sips and bites of his fries and cheeseburger, his appetite diminished by the scene he had witnessed. His eyes kept drifting to the window, watching the yellow-dressed twins as they finished their meager meal outside. Just as he was considering approaching them, the girls stood up and made their way back into the restaurant. Their small forms moved tentatively through the dining area, their eyes darting from table to table. Keanu could see the weariness in their posture, the slight slump of their shoulders suggesting that their scavenged meal had done little to satisfy their hunger. As they drew closer to his booth, Keanu straightened in his seat. The twins hesitated as they approached, fear flickering across their identical faces as they met his serious expression. For a moment, it seemed they might retreat, but Keanu's gentle voice stopped them. "Hey there," he said softly, careful not to startle them. "Are you hungry?" The girls exchanged a quick glance, a silent communication passing between them. The slightly taller of the two, by mere millimeters, took a small step forward. "Yes, sir," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the ambient noise of the restaurant. Keanu's heart clenched at the formal address from such a young child. He gestured to the empty seats across from him. "Would you like to sit down?" Again, the twins shared a look before nodding cautiously. They slid into the booth, their movements synchronized in a way that spoke of years of shared experiences. "Wait here for just a moment, okay?" Keanu said, standing up. "I'll be right back." He made his way to the counter, acutely aware of the eyes of other patrons following him. At the register, he ordered 2 Happy Meals, pausing as he considered the toy options. "Do you have any Hello Kitty keychains left?" he asked the cashier. The young man behind the counter nodded, reaching under the counter to produce 2 identical Hello Kitty keychains. As he rang up the order, Keanu couldn't help but ask about the girls. "Those twins," he began, keeping his voice low. "Do they come here often?" The cashier's expression darkened slightly. "Look, mister," he said, his tone cautious but firm. "It's best if you just leave those girls alone. We're told it's not our business." Keanu's brow furrowed at the cryptic response. Has anyone called the police? Surely someone could help them. The cashier's eyes darted around nervously before he leaned in closer. "Listen," he whispered. "I'm just following order here. Just mind yourself, okay?" Before Keanu could press further, the cashier straightened up, his face resuming its neutral expression as he handed over the Happy Meals. Confused and slightly unsettled, Keanu made his way back to the booth. His heart sank as he approached. The seats where the twins had been sitting were now empty. Scanning the restaurant quickly, he spotted them outside at their previous table. With a sigh, he gathered the Happy Meals and headed out, leaving his unfinished meals on the booth inside. As he approached the outdoor table, the girls' eyes widened at the sight of the colorful boxes and toys. Keanu set the meals down in front of them, along with the Hello Kitty keychains. "Here you go," he said gently. "I thought you might like these." The twins stared at the food and toys in disbelief, their small hands hovering uncertainly over the unexpected gifts. Keanu's heart ached at their hesitation, wondering what experiences had taught such young children to be so wary of kindness. As the girls began to eat, Keanu took a step back, surveying the area. He looked for any sign of parents or guardians, his mind racing with questions. Should he call emergency services? Would that help or potentially make things worse? His contemplation was interrupted by the sudden appearance of a disheveled woman. Her condition was noticeably worse than the children's, her clothes dirty and torn, her hair a tangled mess. She stormed towards the table, her eyes blazing with anger. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" she snarled at Keanu, placing herself between him and the girls. Keanu held up his hands in a placating gesture. "I'm sorry, I just wanted to help. Are you their mother?" The woman's eyes narrowed, showing no recognition of his celebrity status. "That's none of your damn business. Stay away from my kids, you creep." Before Keanu could respond, the woman grabbed the girls' arms, yanking them away from the table. The twins looked back at him, their eyes wide with a mixture of fear and longing, before they were pulled out of sight. Keanu stood there, stunned by the sudden turn of events. The Happy Meals and toys lay abandoned on the table, a stark reminder of the brief moment of joy he had tried to provide. What had he just witnessed? And more importantly, what could he do to help? Keanu stood in the parking lot, the abandoned Happy Meal boxes and Hello Kitty keychains weighing heavily in his hands. He couldn't shake the image of the twins' faces as they were dragged away, a mixture of fear, resignation, and a flicker of something that might have been hope. The contrast between their relatively nice, albeit dirty, yellow dresses and their apparent poverty nagged at his conscience. He made his way to a nearby trash can, disposing of the food containers but pocketing the keychains. As he walked back to his car, an internal debate raged within him. The rational part of his mind told him to leave, to call the authorities and let them handle it. But something deeper, a gut feeling he couldn't ignore, urged him to do more. Sliding into the driver's seat, Keanu sat for a moment, his hands gripping the steering wheel. The sun had fully set now, the parking lot illuminated by the harsh glow of streetlights. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and made his decision. Starting the car, he pulled out of the parking lot slowly, his eyes scanning the street. In the distance, he could just make out three figures walking along the sidewalk, the disheveled woman and the two small forms of the twins. Keeping a safe distance, Keanu began to follow them. Starting the car, he pulled out of the parking lot slowly, his eyes scanning the street. In the distance, he could just make out three figures walking along the sidewalk, the disheveled woman and the two small forms of the twins. Keeping a safe distance, Keanu began to follow them. The streets became increasingly run down as they drove, the well-maintained suburban areas giving way to more neglected neighborhoods. Keanu's hands tightened on the steering wheel as he realized just how dire the girl's living situation might be. After about 15 minutes of driving, the woman and the twins turned off the main road. Keanu parked his car at the corner, watching as they made their way into an area filled with campers and trailers. The setting sun worked to his advantage, his black attire blending with the growing shadows as he cautiously followed on foot. Finding a position behind a dilapidated fence, Keanu observed as the trio approached an old trailer. Its once white exterior was now a dingy grey, with rust streaking down the sides. The door creaked loudly as they entered, the sound echoing in the quiet evening air. Keanu's heart raced as he waited, unsure of what he might witness next. After a few tense minutes, the door of the trailer opened again. The woman emerged, but this time with only one of the twins. The girl being led away was crying, her small body shaking with sobs as she reached back towards the trailer. "No, please, I don't want to go." Her voice carried on the night air, breaking Keanu's heart. The other twin appeared briefly in the doorway of the trailer. Behind her, Keanu could make out the silhouette of a man wearing only a white tank top, a cigarette dangling from his lips. The smoke curled around him, creating an ominous haze in the dim light of the trailer. As the woman dragged the crying twin away, disappearing into the maze of trailers and campers, Keanu made a split-second decision. He crept towards the trailer where the other twin remained, his actor's training allowing him to move silently despite his racing heart. Reaching the trailer's door, Keanu paused. He could hear muffled voices inside but couldn't make out the words. Carefully, he reached into his pocket and pulled out one of the Hello Kitty keychains. With a silent prayer that he wasn't making a terrible mistake, he placed the keychain near the door, hoping the girl would see it later and understand it as a sign of his presence and concern. As he retreated to his hiding spot, Keanu's mind whirled with possibilities. What was happening in that trailer? Why were the twins being separated? And most importantly, how could he help without potentially making the situation worse? With a heavy heart, Keanu turned his attention to the direction the woman had taken the other twin. He knew he couldn't leave, not now. Whatever was happening here, he was determined to uncover the truth and find a way to help these children. As he set off to follow the woman and the crying twin, Keanu steeled himself for whatever might come next, knowing that the night was far from over. As the last traces of daylight faded from the sky, Keanu carefully made his way through the labyrinth of trailers and campers. He kept his eyes fixed on the distant figures of the woman and the remaining twin, their silhouettes barely visible in the growing darkness. The pair crossed a street and disappeared into a thicket of dense bushes. Keanu hesitated for a moment before following, his steps cautious on the unfamiliar terrain. As he pushed through the foliage, the sound of rushing water grew louder, and the ground beneath his feet began to slope downward. Emerging from the bushes, Keanu found himself on the bank of a small stream. The water gurgled softly as it flowed beneath a concrete bridge, its underside barely visible in the dim light. It was there, in the shadows beneath the bridge, that Keanu spotted their destination, a half-destroyed camper, its rusted frame a stark silhouette against the darkness. Keanu watched as the woman and the girl disappeared into the broken structure. He waited, counting the seconds that turned into minutes, ensuring that the woman wasn't going to emerge again. The sound of the stream and the occasional distant car passing overhead on the bridge were the only noises breaking the eerie silence. When he was certain they had settled in for the night, he made his approach, his footsteps careful on the uneven ground. Standing before the battered door, he took a deep breath and knocked. The response was immediate and hostile. "Who's there?" a voice snarled from inside. "We ain't got nothing worth stealing, so just piss off." Keanu cleared his throat. "I'm not here to steal anything. I wanted to make sure the girl was okay." There was a moment of silence, then the sound of movement inside the camper. The door flew open, revealing the disheveled woman. Her eyes, wide with a mixture of fear and anger, locked onto Keanu. "You," she hissed. "You followed us," she hissed. "What kind of creep are you? I told you to leave us alone." "I'm not here to cause any trouble," Keanu said, holding up his hands in a placating gesture. "I'm worried about you and your daughters. I want to help if I can." The woman's laugh was bitter and mocking. "Help? You think you can help? You don't know anything about our situation." "Then tell me," Keanu pressed gently. "Help me understand." The woman's eyes searched his face, looking for any sign of deceit. After a long moment, she spoke again, her voice low and serious. "Who are you, really? What's your angle here?" Keanu took a deep breath. "My name is Keanu Reeves. I'm an actor. You might recognize me from—" The woman's laugh cut him off, a harsh, mocking sound. "Yeah, right. And I'm the Queen of England. Listen, pretty boy, I don't know what your game is, but you picked the wrong mark. We've got nothing for you, so why don't you go find some rich folks to con?" Realizing he needed to prove his identity, Keanu pulled out his phone. He quickly pulled up a scene from John Wick and showed it to the woman. Her eyes widened as she looked from the screen to Keanu's face and back again. "I'm telling you the truth. I am Keanu Reeves, and I'm genuinely concerned about you and your daughters." Keanu reached for his wallet and pulled out his driver's license, holding it up for the woman to see. The woman squinted at the ID, her expression shifting from disbelief to shock. "Well, I'll be damned," she muttered. Then her eyes snapped back to Keanu's face, suddenly sharp and calculating. "So what's a big shot like you doing following us? What do you want with my girls?" The accusation in her tone was clear, and Keanu felt a wave of revulsion at the implication. "Nothing like that," he said firmly. "I saw you at the restaurant, saw how hungry the girls were. I couldn't just walk away without knowing they were safe." The woman stared at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then, to Keanu's surprise, she stepped back and opened the camper door wider. "You want to know our story?" she asked, her voice taking on a hard edge. "Fine, but it'll cost you. Consider it the price of admission for your little adventure in poverty tourism." Keanu nodded, understanding that in her world, nothing came for free. As he stepped into the cramped, musty interior of the camper, he knew he was crossing a line. Whatever he learned here tonight would change things for better or worse. There would be no going back to the comfortable ignorance of his celebrity life. Keanu stepped into the broken camper. The cramped interior was a jarring contrast to the polished world Keanu was accustomed to. The air was heavy with the acrid stench of stale cigarette smoke and the sour tang of neglect. The only light came from an oil lantern perched precariously on a rickety table, its dim, flickering glow casting long shadows that danced across the squalid space. Torn seat cushions lay scattered, their stuffing spilling out like wounded relics of better times. The walls were stained and streaked with grime, their surface a testament to years of hardship and abandonment. The faint, wavering light from the lantern only accentuated the camper's decay, highlighting the stark realities of lives lived in quiet desperation. In the corner, huddled on a tattered sleeping bag, sat the twin who had been brought here. Her knees were drawn up to her chest, and her red, swollen eyes, wide and unblinking, tracked Keanu's every move with a mixture of wariness and curiosity. The faint light from the oil lantern cast soft shadows across her tear-streaked face, making her appear even smaller and more fragile. Keanu crouched down slowly, careful not to startle her, and offered a gentle smile. Reaching into his pocket, he pulled out the Hello Kitty keychain he had kept from earlier. He held it out in his open palm, the tiny charm glinting faintly in the lantern's glow. Her small hand hesitated for a moment before reaching out, trembling slightly to take it. As her fingers curled around the keychain, a flicker of recognition crossed her face, a spark of connection in the depths of her weary eyes. "Sit," the woman commanded, gesturing to a greasy, stained table. Keanu complied, settling onto a rickety chair that creaked ominously under his weight. The woman lit a cigarette, the smoke curling around her in a hazy cloud. "So, Mr. Hollywood," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm, You want to hear our story? Well, it'll cost you. Keanu hesitated for a moment before reaching for his wallet. Before he could open it, the woman snatched it from his hands, rifling through and pulling out all the cash inside. Keanu made no move to stop her, understanding that this was about more than money. I was homeless in New York once. I know people pay good money to watch movies at those cinemas. Well, now you pay to hear mine. The woman counted the bills, a bitter smile crossing her face. Well, looks like you can afford the director's cut, she said, pocketing the cash. She reached into a cooler by her feet, pulling out a can of beer and tossing it to Keanu. Might as well get comfortable. As Keanu opened the beer more out of politeness than desire, the woman began her tale. Name's Laura, she said, taking a long drag on her cigarette. Used to have a life in New York. Nice apartment, decent job. Then the market crashed and it all went to hell. He couldn't handle it, just up and left one day. Me and the girls, we tried to make it work, but... She trailed off, taking another long drag of her cigarette. She gestured toward the girl curled up in the corner. That's Casey, she said softly. Her sister's Freya. Laura's voice hitched slightly as she said the name, a flicker of pain flashing in her eyes. She paused, collecting herself before continuing. We ended up here after our car broke down. The camper's dry in the summer, but most of the year we're surrounded by streams. It's swampy all around. Her gaze drifted to the floor, her tone growing reflective. Lucky, I guess, that the camper landed on this patch of dry ground right by the bank. It's not much, but it keeps us off the worst of it. Keanu listened intently, his mind struggling to reconcile the woman before him with the life she described. As Laura continued, her story took an even darker turn. That's when we met the money collectors, she said, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. They offered us a way to make some cash, said the girls could beg and bring in money, seemed better than starving. That guy you met earlier, is he one of them? Keanu asked, his voice low but firm. The shifting silhouette of the oil lantern's flickering light played across his stern expression, casting sharp shadows that deepened the intensity in his eyes. You're a real stalker, aren't you? Laura chuckled, the sound low and throaty as she brought her cigarette to her lips. She took a long drag, the ember flaring briefly in the dim light, before exhaling a cloud of smoke that curled lazily in the air. I'm starting to like you, she added with a sly grin, her eyes glinting with amusement. You've got guts. I thought actors are only brave in movies. Keanu shrugged, his expression steady as he waited for her to answer his question. Casey and Freya were forced to beg daily, meeting strict quotas set by the collectors. Failure to meet these quotas came with severe consequences. 3 weeks without enough money, Laura choked out, and they take a child just gone, and we never see them again. Laura's eyes started filling with tears, despite her strong demeanor, as she described the brutal reality of their situation. Freya, Laura continued, her voice breaking, she's with them now. We haven't had enough money for 3 weeks. The local folks, they've gotten wise to the girls, won't give them anything anymore, and now... She couldn't finish the sentence, overcome with emotion. Keanu's mind raced. Why haven't you gone to the police, he asked, though he feared he already knew the answer. Laura's laugh was hollow and pained. Police? We haven't seen a cop in this part of town in months. There's something bigger going on here. Some network that's got its fingers in everything. But what do I know? I'm just a beggar, a homeless nobody. The implications of Laura's words were staggering. Keanu felt as if he had stumbled into a nightmare, one that existed just beneath the surface of the world he thought he knew. Laura's next words snapped him back to the present. Please, she begged, her earlier bravado crumbling. Help me get Freya back. The money collector, Connie, lives in that trailer we saw. If we don't get her soon... Keanu nodded, his resolve hardening. He had jumped into this situation blindly, driven by compassion and curiosity. Now faced with the dark reality of Laura and her daughter's lives, he knew he couldn't walk away. As he agreed to help, Keanu couldn't help but think of the roles he had played, heroes facing impossible odds, fighting against corrupt systems. But this wasn't a movie. The dangers here were real, the consequences potentially fatal. Please, sir, Casey finally spoke up, but she kept staring down at her knees, her small hands clenched tightly in her lap. "It should have been me." "No matter which one of you they picked, Casey, the other would feel the same," Laura said. Looking at Laura's desperate face and Casey's haunted eyes, Keanu knew he had to try. He would need to summon every ounce of his acting skills, every bit of knowledge he had gained from his action roles, to navigate this dangerous situation. The rusted door of the camper creaked open, and Keanu stepped out into the night, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. As Keanu, Laura, and Casey made their way back through the labyrinth of trailers and campers, the gravity of their situation weighed heavily upon them. The night air was thick with tension, broken only by the occasional distant bark of a dog or the muffled sounds of life from the surrounding dwellings. Keanu's mind raced, trying to formulate a plan. His years of experience in action movies had taught him how to appear confident and in control, even when facing dangerous situations. But this was real life with real consequences, and he knew he had to tread carefully. As they approached Connie's trailer, Keanu noticed that the Hello Kitty keychain he had left earlier was gone. He allowed himself a small glimmer of hope that Freya had found it and understood its significance. Laura's steps became more hesitant as they neared their destination. Keanu placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder, feeling her tremble beneath his touch. "It's going to be okay," he said softly, hoping he sounded more confident than he felt. "We're going to get Freya back." Laura nodded, taking a deep breath to steady herself. Casey clung to her mother's hand, her eyes wide with fear and anticipation. As they reached the trailer, Keanu took the lead, stepping forward to knock on the door. The sound echoed ominously in the quiet night. Keanu's heart raced. He had faced countless challenges in his acting career, grueling stunts, emotionally charged scenes, even life-threatening situations on set. But none of it compared to this. This wasn't make-believe. For a moment there was silence, then the door creaked open, revealing a man who could only be Connie. He was tall and lean, with a face that spoke of hard living and harder choices. His eyes narrowed as he took in the sight before him. Well, John Wick himself at my front door." His eyebrows shot up, a smirk playing at the corners of his mouth, and he chuckled. "Ain't you the spitting image of that movie star?" His eyes roved over Keanu's face. "Tell me, Laura, where did you find this imposter we can make real money on the street with his face? Conning people, you know?" Laura cleared her throat. "This is Keanu Reeves," she said, "and he's here to help me get Freya back." Connie's laugh was harsh and guttural. "You think you might scare me by bringing in John Wick imposter to my door?" Laura stepped forward, her voice shaking but determined. "Where is she, Connie? Please, we need to know she's safe." Connie's expression hardened. "Safe? She's as safe as any of us in this world. But she ain't here. Already took her to a client's house. You know the rules, Laura. 3 weeks without payment and—" He left the sentence unfinished, but its implications hung heavy in the air. Keanu felt a surge of anger. "Listen," he said, his voice low and intense. "I don't know all the details of what's going on here, but I know it's wrong. Tell us where Freya is, or I'll call the police right now." Connie's laugh was cold and humorless. "Police in this part of town? You think the cops care about what happens to people like them? We haven't seen or heard a single cop in months in this part of town. Besides, you call them, and who knows what might happen to little Freya." The threat was clear, and Keanu felt a chill run down his spine. He realized he had to change tactics. "How much?" he asked abruptly. Connie's eyebrows raised again. "Excuse me." "How much to get Freya back? Name your price." A slow, calculating smile spread across Connie's face. "Well, now that's more like it. Let's see. The client paid $300 for her, so let's make it $600 plus a little extra for my trouble. Call it an even $650. Keanu nodded, reaching for his wallet before remembering that Laura had emptied it earlier. He turned to her, a questioning look in his eyes. Laura, understanding the silent communication, fumbled in her pockets. With shaking hands, she produced a wad of crumpled bills, the money she had taken from Keanu's wallet. "You're really the actor, aren't you?" he laughed. "I should have charged for more, including this woman's payment deadline." As Connie counted the cash, Keanu felt a mix of emotions. relief that they might be able to secure Freya's return, but also a deep sense of unease about the larger system at play here. Connie finished counting and nodded, seemingly satisfied. "All right then," he said, "let's go get your girl." As they piled into Connie's battered pickup truck, Keanu couldn't shake the feeling that this was far from over. They had managed to buy Freya's freedom for now, but the underlying issues, the poverty, the exploitation, the apparent corruption, remained. As the truck rumbled to life and they set off into the night, Keanu made a silent vow. He would see this through and save Freya and this family tonight. The battered pickup truck rumbled through the night, its headlights cutting through the darkness as Connie navigated the unfamiliar streets. Keanu sat in the passenger seat, his body tense, eyes scanning their surroundings for any potential threats. In the back seat, Laura held Casey close, both of them silent, their faces etched with worry and hope. As they drove, Keanu's mind raced, trying to process everything he had learned and experienced in the past few hours. He had stepped into a world far removed from the glitz and glamour of Hollywood, a world where survival often meant compromising one's morals and where the line between right and wrong became blurred. After what felt like an eternity, Connie pulled the truck to a stop in front of a nondescript house in a rundown neighborhood. The peeling paint and overgrown lawn spoke of neglect, but the expensive cars parked in the driveway hinted at a different story. "Wait here," Connie grunted, killing the engine. "I'll go talk to the client." As Connie disappeared into the house, an uncomfortable silence settled over the truck. Keanu turned to Laura, his voice low and urgent. "When we get Freya back, you need to leave, all of you. This isn't safe." Laura's laugh was hollow. "Leave and go where? This is all we have." Before Keanu could respond, the front door of the house opened, and Connie emerged, followed by a well-dressed man who looked jarringly out of place in the dilapidated surroundings. The man's eyes widened as they fell on Keanu. "Well, I'll be damned," he chuckled. "When Connie said Keanu Reeves was here to buy back the girl, I thought he was pulling my leg. But here you are, large as life." Keanu stepped out of the truck, his jaw set. "We're here for Freya. Where is she?" The man's amusement faded, replaced by a calculating look. Now, not so fast. This is quite the unusual situation. A Hollywood star getting mixed up in our little business. I'm curious. Why do you care about one little girl?" Keanu felt his anger rising but forced himself to remain calm. "It doesn't matter why. We've paid. We want the girl." The man studied Keanu for a long moment before nodding. "Fair enough. But you understand, this complicates things. Having someone like you involved, it would put me in a more difficult situation. You see, I'm just a man here and I have specific needs." "Did you harm the girl?" Keanu asked, taking a few steps toward him with his bold stare. "No, not yet. I haven't laid a single hand on her." "Freya, is this true?" Freya nodded. "But please help me. I want to go home." She fumbled in her pocket, and the Hello Kitty keychain metal chimed. "What do you want?" Keanu looked at the man and asked, his voice tight. "Insurance, your silence, of course, but more than that. We need to know you won't use your influence to cause problems, at least for me." "And if I agree?" The man gestured towards the house. "Then you can take the girl and go, but understand this. We'll be watching. One wrong move, one whisper to the wrong person, and it won't just be the girl and her family who suffer. I understand you treasure your professional reputation." The weight of the decision pressed down on Keanu. He knew that walking away now meant turning his back on a systemic problem, one that might affect far more people than just Freya and her family in the future. But staying involved could put his professional career and safety in danger. Keanu took a deep breath, channeling the calm determination of his on-screen personas. "I understand," he said, his voice steady. "Bring Freya out and we'll leave." The man nodded, seemingly satisfied. He disappeared into the house, returning moments later with Freya. The young girl looked terrified, her eyes darting between the faces around her until they landed on her mother and sister. With a cry, she broke free from the man's grip and ran to Laura, who enveloped her in a tight embrace. As the family reunited, Keanu turned back to the man. "We're done here," he said firmly. But know this, I may be keeping quiet, but I won't forget what I've seen. If I ever hear of you hurting these girls or anyone else again, all bets are off." The man's smile was cold. "Fair enough, Mr. Reeves. Let's hope our paths never cross again." With that, Keanu ushered Laura and the girls back into the truck. Connie climbed into the driver's seat, his face unreadable. As they pulled away from the house, Keanu felt a mix of relief and unease. They had rescued Freya, but at what cost? And what would happen to all the others trapped in this cycle of exploitation? The drive back to the campground was silent, each person lost in their own thoughts. When they arrived, Keanu helped Laura and the girls out of the truck. As Connie drove away, Keanu turned to the family. "Listen," he said softly, "I know you don't have many options, but you can't stay here. It's not safe." Laura nodded, her eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude and resignation. "We know, but where can we go?" Keanu made a split-second decision. "Come with me. I have a place where you can stay, at least for now. We'll figure out the rest later." As they walked towards Keanu's car, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of a much larger story. He had glimpsed a world hidden in plain sight, a world of desperation and exploitation that existed just beneath the surface of society. And now that he had seen it, he knew he couldn't simply walk away. The car pulled out of the campground, leaving behind the world of trailers and broken dreams. But as they drove towards an uncertain future, Keanu knew that the memories of this night would stay with him forever, shaping his understanding of the world and his place in it. As Keanu drove Laura and the twins away from the campground, the adrenaline of the night's events began to wear off, replaced by a heavy silence. The girls, reunited at last, clung to each other in the back seat, while Laura stared out the window, her face a mask of worry and exhaustion. Keanu's mind raced, trying to process everything that had happened and figure out their next move. He knew that simply providing temporary shelter wasn't enough. These people needed real help, a chance to break free from the cycle of poverty and exploitation that had trapped them. Otherwise, they would easily return to it one day. As if on cue, Keanu's phone rang, the sound startling in the quiet car. He glanced at the screen, recognizing the name of his friend Robbie. With a start, he remembered their planned meetup, now long overdue. "I need to take this," Keanu said softly to Laura. "It's a friend of mine. He might be able to help us." Laura nodded silently, her eyes never leaving the road ahead. Keanu answered the call, his voice low. "Robbie, hey, I'm sorry about tonight. Something came up." "It's Keanu, we were getting worried, man. Where are you? Is everything okay?" Robbie's voice was filled with concern. Keanu hesitated for a moment before making a decision. "Actually, Robbie, I could use your help. You're still with the NYPD, right?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Yeah, I am." "Keanu, what's going on? Are you in trouble?" "Not me," Keanu replied, glancing in the rearview mirror at the twins. "But I've stumbled onto something that could be big, Robbie. Something bad, and I think we're going to need some official help to deal with it." Over the next few minutes, Keanu gave Robbie a brief rundown of the night's events, careful to keep his voice low so as not to upset Laura or the girls further. As he spoke, he could hear Robbie's sharp intake of breath, the gravity of the situation sinking in. "Jesus, Keanu," Robbie said when he had finished. This could be huge. What you did, you might have just nicked the tip of the iceberg, and lucky those girl and that client was an easy one to deal with, perhaps given your reputation. But let me tell you, this Connie could be a complicated case. We're talking about a potentially wider network of exploitation. It's not going to be easy to tackle. "I know, he went easy on me just to avoid a bigger problem." Keanu replied, his voice tight. "This is why I relay this to you. The police have to do something, Robbie. These people, they're trapped, and there are probably more children. Even as we speak right now, Connie might already be on the move with his camper van." There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line. Then Robbie's voice came back, filled with determination. "Okay, here's what we're going to do. Based on the camper park location that you told me, I'm going to make some calls and reach out to some trusted contacts in different departments. We need to approach this carefully and build a solid case before we move in. Can you keep Laura and the girls safe for now?" Keanu nodded, even though Robbie couldn't see him. Yeah, I can do that. I'm taking them to my villa for now. It's secure and they'll be safe there. Good, Robbie replied. Keep them there and don't let them contact anyone from their old life, at least for now until the police handle this. I'll be in touch soon with our next steps. As Keanu ended the call, he felt a mix of relief and apprehension. They had taken the first step towards addressing the larger issue, but he knew the road ahead would be long and potentially dangerous. He turned to Laura, who had been listening intently to his side of the conversation. That was my friend Robbie, he explained. He's a police officer, but one we can trust. He's going to help us figure out how to deal with this situation properly. Laura's eyes widened with fear. The police? What if they just send us back? Keanu reached out, gently squeezing her shoulder. I promise you, Laura, that won't happen. Robbie is one of the good ones, and I won't let anyone hurt you or the girls again. We're going to fix this, not just for you, but for everyone trapped in that life. As they continued their drive towards Keanu's home, the first hints of dawn began to color the sky. It was a new day, filled with uncertainty but also with hope. Keanu knew that the journey ahead would be challenging, but looking at the sleeping faces of the twins in the back seat, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. This wasn't a role he could walk away from when the director called cut. This was real life with real stakes and real consequences, and Keanu was determined to see that Laura and the girls were safe, no matter what it took. The drive to Keanu's villa was quiet, the events of the night weighing heavily on all of them. As they pulled up to the gates, the twins stirred in the back seat, their eyes widening at the sight of the sprawling estate. Is this where we're staying? Casey asked, her voice tinged with awe. Keanu nodded, feeling a lump form in his throat at the wonder in her voice. Yes, for as long as you need. But you must promise me one thing, that you will undergo rehabilitation and therapy to quit alcohol. Laura nodded eagerly. I'd do that for my girls and my future with them. Thank you. As they entered the villa, Keanu's staff, who had been quickly briefed on the situation, greeted them warmly. Maria, the housekeeper, showed Laura and the twins to their rooms, a spacious suite for Laura and an adjoining room for the girls. I can't believe this, Laura murmured, taking in the luxurious surroundings. Why are you doing all this for us? Keanu's answer was simple but heartfelt. Because everyone deserves a second chance, Laura, and sometimes we all need a little help to make the most of it. As the morning progressed, Keanu's personal assistant arrived, immediately diving into the logistics of arranging for Laura's rehabilitation and researching suitable schools for the twins. The girls, meanwhile, had discovered the backyard with its swimming pool and play area. Their excited voices drifted in through the open windows, a sound that brought tears to Laura's eyes. Go on, Keanu encouraged gently, sliding open the glass doors. It's okay, they're safe here. As Casey and Freya ran out into the yard, their laughter floating back to them on the warm morning breeze, Keanu felt a profound sense of rightness settle over him. This was just the beginning of a long journey, he knew, but it was a start, a chance for this family to reclaim the joy and innocence that had been stolen from them. Keanu sat with Laura on the terrace, watching the twins play in the garden below. The transformation in just a few short hours was remarkable. The girls, who had been so withdrawn and fearful, were now chasing each other around the yard, their faces alight with joy. I can't remember the last time I saw them like this, Laura said softly, her eyes never leaving her daughter's. I'd almost forgotten what their laughter sounded like. Keanu nodded, understanding the weight of her words. They're resilient, he said. Children have an amazing capacity to heal, to find joy even after experiencing such darkness. And you, Laura, you've given them the strength and stability they needed to do that. Laura wiped away a tear, her voice thick with emotion. I couldn't have done it without you, Keanu. You didn't just save us last night. You've given us a future, a real chance at life. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, Keanu reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. The dangers they had faced, the battles they had fought, were not yet ended. The work wasn't over. The investigation would be ongoing, with new challenges arising regularly. Keanu remained committed to the cause, determined to use his platform to raise awareness about trafficking and advocate for better protection for vulnerable children. As he watched Casey and Freya chase butterflies in the morning light, their laughter echoing across the garden, Keanu made a silent promise. To himself, to Laura, to the twins, and to all those still trapped in the darkness they had escaped. He would continue to fight, to use his resources and influence to shed light on the shadows where evil thrived. And he would never stop believing in the power of second chances, of unexpected heroes, and the transformative power of compassion.